Queen Zera stood at the observation deck of her massive warship, watching the small human transport dock with her flagship. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the starlight, creating rainbow patterns across her 8-foot frame. Around her, the Keth officers whispered nervously about meeting with humans for the first time. "Your Majesty," General Voss approached with his usual heavy footsteps. "The human delegation has arrived. Our intelligence says they are a weak species. This negotiation should be simple." Zera nodded, but kept her eyes on the transport ship. She had ruled the Keth Empire for 20 years, expanding their territory across 17 star systems. Every species that came before her either trembled in fear or puffed up their chests in useless displays of dominance. She expected the same from these humans. The docking bay doors opened with a loud hiss. Zera waited in the main conference room, her advisors arranged behind her in perfect formation. The massive doors slid open, and the human delegation entered. Zera blinked in surprise. The humans were smaller than she expected. Their leader barely reached her chest, with short brown hair and calm brown eyes. He wore simple clothes without any military decorations or symbols of rank. Behind him walked 3 other humans, equally unremarkable. "Your Majesty," the lead human said with a small bow. "I am Ben, representing the colony of New Terra. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." His voice was quiet but steady. Zera had expected him to speak loudly to show confidence or whisper in fear. Instead, he spoke normally, as if they were equals meeting for tea rather than a queen and a colonial representative. "I am Queen Zera of the Keth Empire," she replied, studying his face for signs of fear or aggression. She found neither. "Your colony has been expanding into territory that belongs to my empire. We are here to discuss your surrender of those systems." Ben nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your concern. May I ask how long the Keth Empire has controlled those systems?" Zera felt a flash of irritation. Other species never questioned her claims. They either accepted them or declared war. "Those systems have been under Keth protection for 50 years, she said firmly. "Protection from what?" Ben asked, pulling out a small tablet. "Our records show those systems were empty when we arrived. No stations, no colonies, no patrol ships." Were there other threats in the area? The question caught Zera off guard. She had claimed those systems during expansion phase, but had never actually settled them. They were buffer zones between her empire and unknown space. But no one had ever asked for details before. The systems were claimed by right of discovery. General Voss stepped forward, his voice harsh. "Your species has no right to question our claims." Ben turned to look at the general without any fear in his expression. "Of course you have the right to claim systems. I'm just trying to understand the situation better. Are there mining rights? Strategic value? Trade routes? Why do you ask so many questions?" Voss demanded. His hand moved toward his weapon. "Because I want to find a solution that works for everyone," Ben said simply. "Fighting costs lives and resources. There might be a better way." Zera stared at this strange human. In 20 years of rule, no one had ever suggested finding a solution that worked for both sides. Every negotiation was about who would win and who would lose. What kind of solution? She found herself asking. Ben smiled slightly. It was not the smile of someone trying to win favor or hide fear. It was genuine. "Perhaps we could start by sharing information about what each side needs. Your empire is vast and successful. These 3 systems are small compared to your holdings. What would make them valuable enough for the Keth Empire to fight for them?" For the next hour, Ben asked questions and listened to the answers. He took notes on his tablet and asked follow-up questions that showed he was paying attention. When General Voss became angry, Ben remained calm. When her advisors tried to intimidate him with displays of their technology, Ben examined everything with curiosity instead of fear. "Your crystal technology is fascinating," Ben said, studying a holographic display. "How does it interface with organic neural systems?" Advisor Kelm, who had designed the interface, found himself explaining the technical details. Soon he was showing Ben the entire system, proud to share his work with someone who understood its complexity. "This is remarkable engineering," Ben said with genuine appreciation. The crystal matrix creates a perfect bridge between biological thoughts and digital systems. This could revolutionize communication across different species. Kelm beamed with pride. Few outsiders understand the beauty of crystal tech. Different perspectives can create new possibilities, Ben replied. Human neural interfaces work differently, but perhaps combining approaches could create something better than either alone. Zara watched this exchange with growing interest. Ben was not trying to prove humans were superior or demanding that Keth technology be shared. He was simply appreciating good work and suggesting collaboration. It was refreshing. The first day of talks ended without any agreements, but without any threats either. As the human delegation prepared to return to their transport, Ben approached Zara. Your Majesty, thank you for your time today. I know these situations can be frustrating. Would it be possible to continue tomorrow? Why are you not demanding immediate answers? Zara asked. Most species want everything decided quickly. Ben considered this question seriously. Important decisions should not be rushed. Both our peoples will live with whatever we decide here. It should be done right, not just done fast. That evening, Zara found herself thinking about the humans' words. She called for reports on the human colony of New Terra. What she learned surprised her. The colony was small but well organized. They had developed new farming techniques that worked in low-gravity environments. Their medical facilities treated sick people from other colonies for free. Their population was growing not through conquest, but because people from other worlds chose to move there. They fight when they must, reported her intelligence officer. But they prefer to solve problems through cooperation. Their military is small, but their soldiers are well-trained. They have never started a war, but they have never lost one either. The next morning, Ben arrived with fresh ideas. Your Majesty, I studied the star charts last night. Those three systems you claimed are positioned perfectly to protect the trade routes between your core worlds and the outer colonies. But they would also protect our trade routes to the galactic market. What are you suggesting? Zara asked. Joint control. Both empires patrol the systems and share the responsibility. Any threats get handled by whoever is closest. Trading ships from both sides use the routes freely. Instead of fighting over the territory, we use it together. General Voss scoffed. Sharing control is weakness. We should take what is ours. Ben turned to face the general directly. General, you have built one of the most powerful militaries in this galaxy. That shows incredible strength. But the strongest position is not having to fight at all. If the Keth Empire and New Terra worked together in those systems, what enemy would dare challenge us? The logic was sound, and Zara could see her advisors thinking it through. A joint patrol would be stronger than either side alone. Trade would benefit both economies. And if the arrangement worked, it could be expanded to other areas for 3 days. They worked out the details. Ben proved to be an excellent negotiator, giving ground on issues that mattered more to the Keth while holding firm on points important to the humans. He found creative solutions that satisfied both sides' core needs. On the 4th day, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed as Zara hurried to the command center. Her advisors and the human delegation following close behind. Report, she commanded. 3 ships approaching fast, her tactical officer announced. Configuration matches the Keth rebel faction led by Commander Thek. Zara's blood ran cold. Commander Thek had been exiled 5 years ago for trying to overthrow her government. He commanded a group of military extremists who believe the Empire should rule through fear alone. They are demanding we surrender the human delegation, the officer continued. They claim the humans are spies sent to weaken the Empire. The main view screen showed 3 heavily armed warships moving into attack formation. Zara knew her single ship could fight them, but not without heavy casualties. Worse, the rebels would target the human transport first to eliminate witnesses. We should evacuate the humans immediately, General Voss said. Get them to safety while we handle this threat. Zara expected Ben to agree quickly. Any rational person would want to escape a battle between Keth warships. Instead, Ben studied the tactical display with intense focus. How many people are on this ship? He asked. 2,000 crew members, Zara replied, confused by the question. And how many civilians are on board the rebel ships? What? Voss looked puzzled. They are military vessels. There should be no civilians. Ben continued studying the display. What about families? Support staff? Anyone who is not a soldier? Why does it matter? Zara asked. Because if there are innocent people on those ships, we need to find a way to protect them too, Ben said quietly. Zara stared at him. In the middle of a crisis that threatened his life, this human was worried about protecting people who were trying to kill him. It was the most irrational thing she had ever heard. It was also the most noble. There may be some civilian contractors on board, she admitted. Engineers, medical staff, ship maintenance crews. Then we need a plan that saves everyone, Ben said. He looked at the tactical display again, his mind clearly working through possibilities. The rebel ships opened fire. Zara's ship shook as energy weapons struck the shields. Her crew returned fire while trying to protect the docked human transport. We need to launch the human ship now, General Voss insisted. They cannot stay here. No, Ben said firmly. If we run, those rebels will hunt us down. Your ship is safer in this fight, but maybe there is another way. What are you thinking? Zara asked. Ben pointed to the tactical display. Your ship is more powerful, but they have superior numbers and positioning. A straight fight will cause casualties on both sides. But what if we change what they are fighting for? Explain. Commander Thick wants to prove that working with humans makes the Empire weak. He expects us to run or beg for protection. What if we do the opposite? What if we help defend your ship? Zara was speechless. This human was volunteering to fight Keth rebels to protect the Keth ship. It was unprecedented. The human transport his weapons? She asked. Small ones, Ben admitted. But we have other tools. Our ship is mining equipment that can be adapted. And we have human tactics. Before anyone could object, Ben was speaking rapidly into his communicator, giving orders in the human language. Through the viewports, Zara watched the human transport detach from her ship and move into a seemingly vulnerable position. What is he doing? Voss demanded. He is making himself an easy target. The rebel ships immediately changed course to attack the smaller human vessel. But as they closed in, the human ship began to move in ways that defied logic. It spiraled and dove, using the larger Keth ships as cover while staying just out of weapons range. Impossible, the tactical officer breathed. How is such a small ship outmaneuvering 3 warships? Humans evolved in a world with dangerous predators. Ben explained calmly as he watched his ship dance through space. We learned to survive by being smarter, not stronger. My pilot is applying those lessons. The human ship led the rebels on a chase that brought them into perfect position for Zara's weapons. Her gunners did not waste the opportunity. Precise shots disabled the rebel ship's engines without destroying them completely. Within minutes, the threat was over. The rebels were captured, their crews taken prisoner, and the civilian contractors safely evacuated. No one had been killed. As the crisis ended, Zara found herself looking at Ben with new eyes. This quiet human had just helped save her ship and her people. He had risked his own life to protect civilians he had never met. He had shown tactical brilliance under pressure. Why did you stay to help us? She asked. You could have escaped. Ben considered the question seriously, as he did everything. Because running away would not have solved the problem. Those rebels would have attacked again later. Better to face the threat together and end it completely. You realize what you have done. Zara said, you have proven that humans and Keth can fight side by side effectively. You have shown that cooperation makes us stronger, not weaker. That was the goal, Ben replied with his quiet smile. That evening, after the negotiations concluded successfully with a joint control agreement, Zara made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She asked Ben to walk with her through the observation gardens on her ship. They walked in comfortable silence among the crystal trees that grew in perfect geometric patterns. The artificial sunlight created rainbows through the crystal leaves, and the air smelled of ozone and growing things. Ben, she said finally, I have a proposal for you. He waited patiently for her to continue. As was his way, the alliance between our peoples would be stronger with a permanent bond. One proposed a marriage between us. uniting the Keth Empire and New Terra through the joining of our lives. Ben stopped walking and turned to face her completely. For a long moment, he was silent, thinking through everything this would mean. Are you proposing this for political reasons? He asked. The question caught Zara off guard. She had expected him to accept immediately for the political advantages, or to politely decline if he found the idea personally unacceptable. She had not expected him to ask about her motivations. Partly, she admitted, such a marriage would cement our alliance and show the galaxy that our species can work together. But not only for politics. What other reasons? Ben asked gently. Zara felt heat rise in her crystalline features, the equivalent of a blush. You interest me, Ben of New Terra, in 20 years of rule. No one has ever treated me as simply a person rather than a queen. You listen when I speak, not to find weaknesses, but to understand my thoughts. You showed courage when my own people needed help, and wisdom when everyone else wanted simple answers to complex problems. And you? Ben asked, how do you feel about this proposal? I think you would make a good husband, Zara said honestly. You are kind, intelligent, and brave. You see solutions where others see only problems. You protect people who cannot protect themselves. These are qualities I admire. Ben smiled, and this time it was not just polite but warm. Then yes, Your Majesty, I would be honored to marry you. You understand what this means? Zara asked. You would become a prince of the Keth Empire. Your life would change completely. All life is change, Ben replied. The question is whether the change makes things better or worse. I believe this change would make things better for both of us, and for both our peoples. The wedding took place 3 weeks later on the neutral space station of Haven Port. Representatives from dozens of species attended, though many came more out of curiosity than respect. The general opinion in the galaxy was that the humans had somehow tricked the mighty Keth Queen into a disadvantageous alliance. Look at him, whispered an ambassador from the Vorthan Confederacy. So small and quiet. What did the Queen see in such an unremarkable creature? Perhaps the humans have some secret power we do not know about, suggested a delegate from the Crystal Collective. More likely they offered her something valuable in trade, laughed a merchant from the Spiral Arm Trading Company. Humans are known to be clever bargainers. Zara heard some of these comments and felt anger rising in her chest. These beings looked at Ben and saw only weakness because he did not boast or threaten or display his strength. They could not see what she saw, the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was capable of, and the wisdom to use that capability only when truly needed. As they exchanged vows in both Keth crystal song and human spoken word, Zara felt a deep contentment. She had spent her life surrounded by people who wanted to use her power for their own purposes. Ben was different. He saw her power as something to be respected and supported, not controlled or exploited. The ceremony concluded with the traditional Keth gift exchange. Zara presented Ben with a crystal pendant that would allow him to communicate with any Keth technology. It was a symbol of complete trust, as such pendants were usually reserved for the highest-ranking nobles. Ben's gift surprised everyone. Instead of offering valuable resources or advanced technology, he presented Zara with a small plant in a simple clay pot. This is from Earth, the human homeworld. He explained, it is called a peace lily. It blooms in the darkness and purifies the air around it. I thought you might like it for your private garden. The alien dignitaries murmured in confusion. A common plant seemed like an inadequate gift for an empress. But Zara held the small pot carefully, understanding the real meaning. Ben was not trying to impress her with wealth or power. He was offering her something beautiful and living that would remind her of hope in dark times. As the newlyweds retired to their quarters on Zara's flagship, the galaxy settled into a new order. The Keth-Human Alliance was officially established, with joint patrol routes and shared technology development programs. Trade increased between their territories, and other species began to see humans as more than just another minor colony. But most observers still considered the humans lucky rather than strong. They had managed to avoid a war and gain a powerful ally through clever negotiation and an advantageous marriage. Few realized they were witnessing the first signs of something That would soon change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. In her private chambers, Zara looked at her new husband as he carefully tended to the peace lily, making sure it had the right amount of light and water. There was something in the way he worked, a precise efficiency that spoke of deep knowledge and careful training. "Ben," she said, "may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. What did you do before becoming a diplomat?" "Your file says you served in the colonial administration, but it is not very detailed." Ben continued caring for the plant as he answered, "I was a military advisor for New Terra's Defense Council. Before that, I studied conflict resolution and strategic planning at the Earth Military Academy." "You are a soldier?" Zara asked with surprise. "Was a soldier," Ben corrected gently. "I prefer building peace to fighting wars. But yes, I had military training. Why did you never mention this during our negotiations?" Ben finally looked up from the plant, his brown eyes serious. "Because it was not relevant to making peace. When you are trying to solve problems with words, it is better not to remind people that you know how to solve them with weapons." Zara felt a chill run through her crystalline spine. For the first time, she wondered what else she did not know about her new husband and his quiet, seemingly harmless people. 6 months had passed since the royal wedding, and Queen Zara found married life surprisingly peaceful. Ben had settled into his role as prince consort with quiet efficiency. He spent his mornings reviewing diplomatic reports, his afternoons meeting with various department heads, and his evenings tending to their small garden of earth plants. The Keth nobles had initially expected him to demand power and influence, as most royal spouses did. Instead, Ben asked thoughtful questions, offered helpful suggestions when requested, and stayed out of matters that did not concern him. This restraint only made the nobles more suspicious. "He is planning something," General Voss insisted during a private council meeting. "No human marries into royalty without seeking personal gain." "Perhaps he is exactly what he appears to be," Zara replied, though she sometimes wondered herself. Ben remained polite and caring, but there were moments when she caught him studying tactical displays with an intensity that seemed unusual for a peaceful diplomat. Their quiet life changed on a Tuesday morning when long-range sensors detected something impossible moving through the Outer Rim systems. The first reports came from mining stations in the Keller system, 17 light-years from the Keth capital. "Your Majesty," Communications Officer Dren announced with a shaking voice, "we have received a distress signal from Keller Station. The transmission cut off after 30 seconds. Technical failure?" Zara asked, though something cold was growing in her stomach. "Unknown, Your Majesty." But 15 minutes later, we lost contact with the entire Keller system. All communication arrays, all navigation beacons, all automated monitoring stations. Complete silence. Ben, who had been reading reports quietly in the corner of the command center, looked up with sudden alertness. "How many people live in the Keller system?" "Approximately 40,000 across various mining operations and research facilities." General Voss replied absently, then caught himself. "Why does a human care about our population figures?" "Because 40,000 people do not vanish without a reason," Ben said quietly, moving to study the tactical display. "What else is in that system? Military installations? Weapons research? Strategic resources?" "Standard mining operations only," Zara answered. "Iron, rare crystals, some gases for fuel production. Nothing that would attract major attention." Ben frowned at the star map. Then whatever took that system wanted the people, not the resources. A chill ran through the command center. In galactic history, only one type of threat consumed populations while ignoring material wealth. But those stories were legends, cautionary tales told to frighten children. The answer came 6 hours later when the automated probe ship Crystal Eye transmitted its final data burst before going silent in the Keller system. The images it sent back made seasoned warriors step away from their screens in horror. The system was full of massive organic ships, each one larger than a Keth battleship. They moved like living creatures, pulsing and writhing through space. Smaller bioforms swarmed around them like insects around a hive. And at the center of the formation was something that defied description, a vast living mass. that seemed to be consuming the very fabric of space around it. The void swarm, Zara whispered. But they are myths, ancient stories. The probe data is real, her science advisor confirmed with a trembling voice. Biomechanical ships of unknown design, energy patterns that match no known technology. And Your Majesty, they are moving toward the Nexus system. The Nexus system housed over 2 million Keth citizens and served as the main hub for 3 major trade routes. If it fell, the entire eastern region of the Empire would be cut off from support. How long until they reach Nexus? Zara demanded. 18 hours at their current speed. Panic spread through the command center like wildfire. Officers shouted orders while others frantically tried to establish communication. With the Nexus defense fleet, the noise level rose as everyone tried to speak at once, creating chaos instead of solutions. Enough! Zara's voice cut through the disorder. General Voss, what are our military options? We can evacuate Nexus system and establish defensive positions at the Korthik Passage. Voss replied, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Create a bottleneck where we can use our superior firepower effectively. That would abandon to million citizens. Zara said, better to save the Empire than lose everything trying to protect one system. Voss argued, the swarm defeated the Arkandi Commonwealth and the Silver Fleet. Conventional tactics have never worked against them. Zara felt the weight of impossible choices crushing down on her. Round the command center, her officers waited for orders that could save or doom millions of lives. The responsibility was overwhelming. What do we know about previous encounters with the swarm? Ben asked quietly. Every civilization that has faced them has either fled or been consumed. Voss replied curtly, there is no defeating them in direct combat, but some civilizations did escape. Ben continued, the stories mention survivors. How did they manage to flee successfully? They abandoned their territory and ran to distant systems, Voss said impatiently, which is exactly what we should be doing now. Ben studied the tactical displays with growing intensity. Show me the swarm attack patterns from historical records. Every recorded encounter. Human, this is not the time for academic research, Voss snapped. We need to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Ben, Zara said gently, what are you thinking? Every predator has a pattern, Ben replied, his eyes never leaving the display screens. The swarm may be alien, but they are still biological entities. They must have behavioral patterns we can understand and exploit. For the next hour, Ben absorbed every piece of information available about the Void Swarm. He studied attack formations, timing patterns, and the remains of destroyed civilizations. His questions grew more specific and technical. The swarm always attacks population centers first. He noted, never military installations or resource sites. They want living beings, not territory or materials, which is why we should evacuate. Voss insisted, no, Ben said, his voice suddenly carrying an authority that made everyone stop talking. If they need living beings, that gives us leverage. We can use that need against them, explain. Zara commanded. Ben turned to face the assembled officers, and for the first time since she had known him, Zara saw something dangerous in his quiet brown eyes. The swarm operates as a hive mind. Individual units have no independent thought. They follow programmed behaviors based on simple stimulus response patterns. If we can disrupt those patterns, we can create chaos in their formations. How do you propose to disrupt a hive mind? Voss asked skeptically. By feeding it contradictory information, Ben replied. Make it think its food sources are in multiple locations at once. Force it to split its attention and resources. Ben moved to the main tactical display and began highlighting systems on the star map. We need to create false population signatures in 12 different locations. Use emergency beacons, broadcast civilian communication channels, generate heat and energy patterns that mimic large settlements. That would require splitting our fleet across multiple systems, Voss objected. We would be weak everywhere instead of strong in one place. Exactly. Ben said with a slight smile that somehow looked predatory. The swarm will split its forces to chase all the false signals. Then we concentrate our entire fleet and hit their main formation while it is divided and confused. The plan was insane. It relied on assumptions about alien psychology and tactical gambles. That could backfire catastrophically. But as Ben explained the details, his reasoning became clear and logical. The key is timing. He continued, pulling up detailed charts. We hit them exactly 17 minutes after they begin their split maneuvers. Not before, when they are still concentrated. Not after, when they have had time to adapt. At the precise moment when they are most vulnerable. How can you be so specific about timing? Zara asked. Ben's expression became distant, as if he was accessing memories from long ago. Because human military doctrine has spent 3,000 years studying how to defeat superior enemies. We evolved fighting creatures stronger and faster than us. We learned that victory goes to whoever can think more steps ahead. General Voss stared at him. You speak as if you have done this before. I have studied every major battle in human history. Ben replied quietly, and I have planned defensive strategies for 17 different invasion scenarios that new Terra might face. This situation matches Scenario 7 with minor variations. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. This quiet, polite human had been preparing for interstellar warfare long before he ever met the Keth Empire. Scenario 7, Zara repeated. What was the original threat model for that scenario? Overwhelming biological force with hive mind characteristics seeking to harvest human populations. For unknown purposes, Ben answered without hesitation. We call it the consumption protocol. You plan for this exact threat. Voss demanded. We plan for every threat we could imagine, Ben said simply. Hope for peace, prepare for war. That is how humans have survived for so long, with 18 hours until the swarm reached Nexus. There was no time to debate alternatives. Zara gave the orders to implement Ben's plan, though half her officers thought it would lead to disaster. The Keth fleet scattered across 12 systems, each ship broadcasting false signals designed to mimic civilian populations. Mining ships were rigged with special transmitters. Automated stations began sending fake distress calls. Energy weapons were configured to create heat blooms that resembled cities from a distance. Ben coordinated everything from the command ship, speaking calmly into communication channels while tracking dozens of variables simultaneously. He seemed to know exactly where each ship should be positioned, and when every signal should be transmitted. How do you keep track of all this? Zara asked, watching him manage the complex operation. Pattern recognition, Ben replied absently. Adjusting the timing on a false signal. Humans are very good at seeing patterns and predicting outcomes. It is how we survive long enough to reach the stars. The Void Swarm took the bait perfectly. Long-range sensors showed their massive bioships splitting into smaller groups, each one heading toward a different false signal. The largest concentration still moved toward Nexus, but it was only half the original force. Now we wait, Ben said, settling back in his chair. 16 minutes and 30 seconds. What happens in 16 minutes and 30 seconds? Voss asked. They will realize the signals are false, Ben explained patiently. Hive minds are efficient but not creative. It will take them exactly that long to analyze the false data and recognize the deception. When they do, they will begin regrouping toward the real population center. And then we attack, Ben said with quiet certainty, while they are scattered and confused before they can reform their defensive patterns. The longest 16 minutes in Keth history crawled by with agonizing slowness. Zara watched the chronometer count down while Ben monitored sensor readings. With mechanical precision, at exactly 16 minutes and 28 seconds, the scattered swarm formations began changing course, all ships. Ben spoke into the fleet communication channel, his voice carrying absolute command authority. Execute attack pattern Gamma on my mark. Target priority is the central biomass. Ignore the smaller units until the primary target is neutralized. Mark. The entire Keth fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Around the main swarm concentration, caught between regrouping maneuvers, the alien bioships had no defensive positions prepared. Keth energy weapons tore into the living hulls of the massive creatures before they could react. But the swarm adapted quickly. The remaining bioships began forming protective barriers around their central mass. While smaller units swarmed toward the Keth fleet, they are learning our attack pattern. General Voss reported with growing anxiety. Expected, Ben replied calmly. Execute pattern Delta. All ships with crystal matrix weapons. Focus fire on grid reference 7 Alpha. Ships with plasma cannons. Suppress the small units at grid 9 Beta. The battle raged for 2 hours. Every time the swarm began to adapt to Keth tactics, Ben switched to a different attack pattern. He seemed to have an endless supply of contingency plans, each one designed to counter specific swarm responses. How many attack patterns did you prepare? Zara asked during a brief lull in the fighting. 47. Ben answered without taking his eyes off the tactical display, plus variations for 17 different environmental conditions and 12 possible enemy adaptation scenarios. Even General Voss was staring at him now. You planned 47 different attack patterns? Only for this type of enemy, Ben clarified. I have different pattern sets for other threat categories. The turning point came when Ben ordered what seemed like a tactical mistake. He pulled 3 heavy cruisers out of defensive formation, leaving a gap that the swarm immediately tried to exploit. Prince Consort, Voss protested. You are exposing our flank. Trust me, Ben replied quietly. The swarm poured through the gap, concentrating their forces for what they thought would be a decisive strike. Instead, they flew directly into a trap. The 3 retreating cruisers had mining charges attached to their hulls, turning them into massive kinetic weapons that struck the swarm formation at maximum speed. The explosion tore through the central biomass, disrupting whatever neural networks connected the hive mind. Smaller swarm units began flying in random directions, their coordination completely destroyed. Finish them, Ben ordered, and his voice held a coldness that sent chills through everyone who heard it. The Keth fleet systematically destroyed the remaining bioships. Within an hour, the entire swarm formation was reduced to floating debris and dying biological matter. As the last enemy ship exploded, the command center erupted in cheers. Officers who had expected certain death were embracing each other with relief and joy. But Ben simply sat in his chair, checking sensor readings to make sure no swarm units had escaped. Is it over? Zara asked. This group is eliminated, Ben replied. But the main swarm hive is still out there somewhere. This was probably just a scouting force. A scouting force? Voss stared at the debris field that had been dozens of massive bioships. That was large enough to destroy entire civilizations. Yes, Ben said matter-of-factly. The main hive would be approximately 50 times larger. The implications hung in the air like a poison cloud. If this had been just a small part of the swarm, what chance did anyone have against the full force? But now we know their weaknesses, Ben continued. Hive minds can be disrupted. Their attack patterns can be predicted. They can be defeated if you understand how to fight them. You speak as if this was a learning exercise, Zara said with a mixture of admiration and concern. In a way, it was, Ben admitted. Humans have been preparing for threats like this for a very long time. Today we proved our theories work in practice. Over the following weeks, reports of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The impossible had happened. Someone had not only survived an encounter with the Void Swarm, but had completely destroyed a swarm formation without losing a single ship. Alien ambassadors, who had mocked the Keth-Human alliance, now requested urgent meetings. Species that had dismissed humans as weak began asking for mutual defense treaties. The balance of power in the galaxy shifted overnight. They are afraid of us now, Zara observed, reading the latest diplomatic reports. Species that would not acknowledge human existence a month ago are offering tribute. In trade agreements, fear is not the goal, Ben replied, carefully pruning one of his earth plants. Respect is better than fear. Fear makes enemies. Respect makes allies. But they do fear us now. They have realized that humans are not the peaceful, weak species they appeared to be. Ben looked up from his gardening with that quiet smile she had come to know so well. We are peaceful, Zara. Peace is what we want most of all. But we are not weak, and we are not helpless. There's a difference. How long have your people been preparing for galactic warfare? She asked. since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be waiting out there. Ben answered honestly, "We hope we will never need to use our preparations, but we refuse to be caught defenseless." Zer thought about this for a long moment. "The other species think you deceived them by hiding your true nature." "We never lied about anything," Ben pointed out. "We said we preferred peaceful solutions to problems. We said we wanted cooperation rather than conflict. We said we valued trade over conquest. All of that is completely true, but you never mentioned that you could destroy entire invasion fleets." "Because we hoped we would never need to," Ben said simply. "A weapon you never have to use is better than one you use every day." That evening, Zer stood on her observation deck looking out at the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, the main Void Swarm hive was still waiting. Other threats existed that she could not even imagine. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of predators and hostile forces. But for the first time in her reign, she felt truly secure, not because of the size of her fleet or the strength of her weapons, but because she had allies who understood that the greatest strength was the kind. "You never had to display." Ben joined her at the observation window, carrying the cups of the Earth beverage called tea. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, offering her a cup. "I'm thinking," Zara said, accepting the warm drink, "that I married a member of the most dangerous species in the galaxy." "Dangerous to our enemies," Ben corrected gently. "Safe for our friends. And which am I?" she asked with a slight smile. Ben's answer was a kiss that tasted of tea and starlight and the promise of a future, where peace was protected by those strong enough to fight for it, but wise enough to choose other solutions whenever possible. In the months that followed, the galaxy learned a new respect for humanity in their quiet strength. The lesson was simple but profound. The most dangerous predators are often the ones that look completely harmless until the moment they choose to show their true nature. And Ben, Prince Consort of the Keth Empire, returned to his gardens and his diplomatic reports, content to let others wonder what other surprises humanity might reveal when the need arose.